What if I told you we could all get along better, even when we disagree? And it's easier than you think. My husband and I used to fight a lot about how to load the dishwasher. How many of you have ever had a knockdown, drag-out fight with someone you love? Disagreement with a neighbor, a coworker, a classmate? Do you ever feel like scrolling through your social media feed is practically an invitation to type something that you're going to regret? What about posting something you actually care about? Does that terrify you as much as it scares me sometimes? So, how's all this conflict going for us? According to statistics, it is not going very well. Did you know that our inability to communicate is the #1 reason why our relationships break down? And I'm talking about all kinds of relationships, not just marriages. It is likely also the reason why 15% of us have cut ties with people who don't share our political beliefs. Now, I'm a divorce attorney, and I've been negotiating high conflict for over 2 decades. I have seen it all. I've had clients come to me battling over a cigar humidor, refusing to attend a graduation because a new girlfriend might be there, and denying overnight visitations to the father because he doesn't do the daughter's hair as well as the mother does. Still, I'm here today to talk about resolving conflict with all the people in your life, not just people that you're getting divorced from, because conflict is showing up everywhere, and it is destroying our relationships, and it doesn't have to. To the contrary, navigating conflict well can actually bring us closer to each other. And that's because biologically, we're hardwired for connection. Science also tells us that if we want to be happy and live long, healthy lives, we have got to stay positively connected, and not just to our partners, our family, our friends, but with strangers. So the person who took your spot in the parking lot before, giving them the finger is not the only answer. Often, when we're pushed to see another person's point of view that doesn't mesh with ours, instead of listening and talking it out to see where maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle, we judge. We shut down. We allow disagreements to escalate, sometimes into all-out war. The worst result is that we become estranged from people that we love. It happens all the time. But does it need to come to this? Isn't there a better way to bridge our differences, no matter how intense? The answer is yes. You see, the problem at the heart of the collective conflict is not that we don't care about each other. It's that when we disagree, our emotions blind us to the path forward, which is right in front of us. My parents introduced me to that path when I was 9 years old, and they divorced. While my brother and I changed houses every single day and adjusted to an entirely new reality, which definitely was not easy, we did not have to suffer the ravages of their discord. Now, that does not mean that there weren't bumps in the road. Even today, I can remember fights about money over things like a sweet 16, my sweet 16. But for the most part, they chose to prioritize peace over being right. Now, at the time, I was pretty embarrassed about our family's happy-ish divorce because I knew a lot of people thought we were weird because everybody got along. But today, I feel so grateful for how they handled it because it could have gone so differently, and my brother and I could have really suffered as a result. Luckily, they not only knew that getting along was an option, but they committed to it consistently, sparing us both a lot of unnecessary heartbreak, the kind that I've witnessed all too often in divorce. Prioritizing peace not only made our life more pleasant, but it paved the way for me to help thousands of people who are ready to fight to dissolve their marriages respectfully. Whether you're going through a divorce, having it out on Instagram, or arguing with your partner about how to load the dishwasher, getting along seems like the obvious choice, right? But somehow, often it's not. I noticed when I was working in divorce court that many people just couldn't get there. Instead of peace as a priority, they were super focused on winning. Now, if this winner-takes-all approach is reflective of the larger world, this is a problem because thinking about winning matters if you only care about being right, which may be satisfying in the short term. It's not going to do a heck of a lot for you or any of us in the long term, especially when it comes to building compassion, connection, or community. The fact is, conflict is inevitable. It's a part of life. Still, we have the ability to deal with it better using 3 skills that I call the YES method. The Y stands for your role in the conflict. The E stands for the emotional story. And the S for shelving heated conversations. Starting with your role in the conflict, don't we all default to thinking that the other person is just a jerk? Sometimes that's true, but often it's us, or we're at least part of that problem. Years ago, I moved from my home in New York City to marry a handsome bird biologist. I moved out to the country, and after I relocated, I realized that he traveled a lot for work. And when he was home, he spent a significant time at the gym. I had left my whole world behind, a job that I loved, my friends, my family, my favorite restaurants, and there I was, alone, just me and the trees. And I felt like I was doing everything at work, at home, and for our 3 small boys. After spending literally years frustrated and angry, one day it hit me. It wasn't up to him or anybody else to make me feel better. And that is when I stopped blaming him and bickering with him about my feelings of isolation. I took it upon myself to create a life that I loved. The fact is, I was not powerless, and neither are you. We have agency and accountability, and the ability to use them both to improve our relationships and make our own lives easier. So once you've looked at the why for your role in the conflict, the next part of the YES method is to consider the E, the emotions at the core of our positions, because our emotions drive pretty much everything. When we're in conflict, our emotional brain kicks our rational brain to the curb. Now, this is a problem because to get to resolution, we need to understand what we're actually fighting about. The mother who complained about the father's hairdressing skills, was his inability to style the daughter's hair the real issue? No. It was her deep grief, her sense of loss, missing her daughter on the night she was with her father. Only once she felt heard did she realize this, and that's when the parties were able to move past the conflict and create a parenting plan that benefited everyone. Making space for each side to express not just what we want, but to understand why we need it takes the charge out of the fight. And that is when we're ready to listen, primed to reach consensus, and we're free to decide whether or not the fight is actually worth it. So now you've looked at your role and you've unpacked the emotional story. The final part of the YES method is the S for shelving heated conversations. Even social media has this figured out. Instead of unfriending, there's an option to pause. Being able to hit that pause button in all areas of our life gives us time for our emotions to settle and our thoughts to marinate before we lash out and say something we can't take back. A brief time out to de-escalate can be game-changing, yet so many of us just don't do it because it takes practice. So instead, we just keep arguing, which only makes things worse. Yet we can get comfortable with shelving by simply responding more slowly when conversations get heated. Whether you're at the divorce mediation table, the kitchen table, or the virtual table in the comments section, finding your way to resolution with people who don't see the world like you do is a dance. It is a dance that I watched my parents do for a really, really long time. Instead of doing it bigger and madder and louder and faster, they showed me that it is about slowing down, saying yes to seeing the world through another person's lens, and giving everybody involved a little bit of grace. Because really, would you rather be right and lose someone you love, or disagree and still maintain the relationship? Only you know the answer in your life, but the good news is you have a choice. Now, to be clear, I am not advocating that anyone stay in a bad or unhealthy relationship. As long as you're doing your best to own your role and unpack and understand the emotional story, part of saying yes may mean shelving someone indefinitely. And if shelving someone indefinitely is not realistic because maybe you have a difficult boss or you're co-parenting with an ex, you can still improve your relationship by shelving what you talk about or how often you interact. The next time you find yourself entering a heated debate or staring down what feels like an aggressive post, remember, things don't have to end badly. I remind myself of this when I'm faced with a situation where I can choose to fight or to get along. Because like you, we divorce attorneys are also human. So now, when my husband starts lecturing me on how to load the dishwasher, instead of reacting, I acknowledge how he feels, and I shelve the conversation. While we may not be able to change other people's opinions, we can maintain relationships with the people that matter to us. We can choose to prioritize peace and to get along better. And I hope that you will. Thank you.